what were even like there were pieces of news that I said we should talk about, and then they're like
They
not a
got
big
destroyed.
deal. It's like it didn't matter. Um, I guess maybe we should like say two words about David Bowie and Glenn Frey uh, um, and Alan Rickman, just because they. I mean, like we could make a drinking game out of me putting Bowie references and songs into the podcast, and like Bowie references in Doctor Who. So uh, yeah, I don't know. Anything you guys want to say really quickly about
Well,
those, or?
here's the thing. We should never go on break.
I guess
Never. We,
that's
we
true.
Mm.
we went on break and three biggies left this earth, and we need to stop that.
Okay, so for the rest of the year, we're not going to go on break. I think okay. So this is what we have to do. Um, Mark, you gave me some episodes that I need to watch from what are they? The fifth and sixth Doctor,
No, the
uh,
seventh and the fifth.
seventh and fifth
Yeah,
Doctor.
because you wanted Peter Davison and Sylvester McCoy, right?
Yeah,
Okay.
because they are both going to be at Salt Lake Comic Con in March, and
I
I am
hate
going.
you.
I'm going to Salt Lake Comic Con in March. If
I
hey,
hate
if
you.
you can, if you can make it, you can stay in my hotel room with me. If you
You know
wanna,
what?
if you wanna come up.
We're gonna talk about that because if
Okay,
I can make it, I'm going.
okay, cool. Because it's going to be awesome, and that would be great. So, yeah, I want to. They're both going to be there, and I just don't want to be a total rube. Like if I'm there, like on Doctor Who panels, and someone like says something about like, "Hey, what's your favorite Sylvester McCoy episode?" I'm like, I don't know. I have no idea. I've only watched the new stuff.
You know,
So,
the tough part is that when Sylvester McCoy's Doctor came around, the show was already going downhill, and there's a lot in McCoy's tenure that just isn't good. And I'm gonna make you watch a couple just so you can get the flavor of what was going on with the show, and you'll see the big differences in terms of quality and writing and story from Sylvester McCoy to Peter Davison, or the other way around, Peter Davison to Sylvester McCoy.
yeah.
There is a big difference, and McCoy had.
Oh, we lost you.
Oh, Marco, can he not hear us?
I don't think so.
Oh, wow.
Mark, we can't hear you.
It's so sad he's just going on and on. Let me text him real quick. Maybe. I'm guessing that's the only way we're going to do this.
Uh,
Poor thing. I wonder how long he's going to go on for.
we'll watch.
We should do Mystery Science Theater and just like start commenting on what he's.
What he's saying. Well, he's very passionate.
I know, that's what's so sad. Like maybe he won't be able to get that passion back the second time.
Oh, those. Oh, the raising of the hands, and he's just. Oh, and, yep.
Okay, I texted him. Let's see. And he's just waiting.
We can't hear you. We can't hear you at all.
Damn earphones. See, we can't try nothing new. We can't have nice things.
Nope. I don't know what happened. He's like, oh, what'd you do? Did you put yourself on mute? Did you accidentally hit the mute button?
I think he
Uh-uh.
unmuted himself, but
Huh. Oh, I've always wanted to shut Mark up, but this is.
oh, he
Oh.
set himself up. Is this self-censorship? Is that what this is?
Obviously.
I think he needs to just reboot or go and like
Yeah.
leave and come back or something.
Yeah. Something
Well,
like
this
that.
is interesting. You're gonna have a lot of editing to do.
No, it's okay. This is nothing. Oh
You
my
can just
gosh.
edit out the entire block all at once, right?
Yeah, exactly. I just
Okay.
just start and stop and yeah.
All right, let's see if he comes back. I texted him, but he didn't. I don't know. I maybe his phone's not there.
I sent him a Facebook message too.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So he said his laptop's having issues. Yeah.
You can do Google Hangouts on your phone. I don't know what the sound would be like, but I know you because like my phone came pre-installed with it, so I know you can do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's yeah.
I'm not even on Facebook right now. Mm.
Do 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 do. Mana mana. Do 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 do.
My nephews and I we sing that, but the Minion style of it,
Oh,
the
that's awesome.
banana banana. Yeah, we love the Minions. I didn't care for the movie all that much, but in general, the Minions are just awesome.
Yeah, the Minions are great. I thought like the Minions movie was fine, but it wasn't like amazing. It has the problem that all prequels have, which is like at the end of the prequel, like you know that the minions end up with Gru. So there's no real tension. You kind of know what's going to happen. Um that's just like a problem with doing prequels
Yeah,
in
you know they're
general.
not gonna perish. So,
Yeah. So like I don't know,
what are
there
you
could be.
doing? I'm talking to Marco right now.
Oh, okay.
Okay, I think you can do it on your phone, and you can't charge it. Oh, what the hell? Yes, we were like, Andrew was like, he's waving his hands and everything. Look at the passion, and we're like, we can't hear what he's saying.
Yeah.
Oh, that makes sense, Andy. He thought maybe you were talking to your kids. That's why he couldn't hear anything.
Oh, no.
Yeah, no, no, we're here. We're just waiting for you. Okay, well, I just wanted to make sure you're okay. All right, bye. Yeah, he said he can't use his phone. He's rebooting, and I guess it takes a while. He can't use his phone, he said, because it's at 20%. And I'm like, well, why don't you just charge it? And he says that if you charge it, like I guess the video camera sucks out more energy than it charges.
Yeah, mine does the same thing.
Really?
So,
I've never tried
but
it because I don't really use like video anything. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So I've never. I don't know. Hopefully, whatever it is, it works. I say no headphones this time. Just no headphone. We can't get fancy here. Apparently, we're supposed to just be semi Luddites or something, and
Yeah,
only use the
yeah,
what?
obviously his when by plugging in the headphones it like told the computer like, "Hey, you should turn off your mic." And like
Oh, there he is. Uh-oh. Can't hear him still. Marco.
nope.
And he doesn't have the headphones in.
Jackson, you're being very good. Thank you. Oh, there he goes. Lost him again.
The
So
comings and goings of Marco De Leon.
hopefully figure it out.
Okay, can you guys hear me?
Yay!
All right. Okay. Cool.
Wow, we did that
Um,
unison, Andy. That was crazy.
Yeah.
all right.
Yeah. So we're working. Okay. So basically, start over with um with talking about Sylvester McCoy.
Okay. So the warning I have is that Sylvester, by the time you get to Sylvester McCoy's era, Doctor Who's already, you know, the quality of the show is already going downhill, and he has what I consider to be the worst companion in all of Doctor Who. The companion, her name is Ace, and she's this 19-year-old felon who likes to blow stuff up, and he picks her up, and she seems to be popular among classic Whovians, but I've never liked her, and I think she weighs the show down quite a bit. There is some good stuff in the Sylvester McCoy era, but there's a lot of bad stuff. And when you compare his era to the Peter Davison era, you're going to see that there's a marked difference between the two, and you can see how the show goes downhill. I'm going to give you a list of all the shows of all the episodes that you need to see, but you also have to keep in mind that the episodes aren't structured the way they are right now. I mean, we're very lucky that we get 1 hour episodes. They used to format them. Do you remember the old 60s Batman TV show?
Of course, I love the '60s
Right.
Batman TV show.
You basically got like about maybe 15 to 20 minutes of material if you were lucky, and then there was a cliffhanger, and then the next week you had like a 5 minute explanation of what went on before, and then it goes back into the story for about 10 minutes, and then you have a cliffhanger again. That's pretty much the way it worked out back then. Um, but there is a lot of good stuff with the Peter Davison era, but he had to fill in some pretty big shoes because he took over after Tom Baker, which is probably still the most popular doctor version of the Doctor ever. And he was my favorite growing up. And if it wasn't for Matt Smith, he'd probably still be my favorite. Although Peter Capaldi's really, really getting up there in terms of favorites. But I'm going to give you a list of stuff that you have to see so you can be ready for Salt Lake City.
Cool. Then that's what I'm gonna do, and then after that, since we found out we're not going to have any new Who this year until Christmas,
Depressing.
in order for us to actually have a podcast to do, I'm gonna have to go back to Classic Who. I'm gonna do Sarah Jane Adventures. I'm going to pick up Torchwood Miracle Day, and just some other random stuff, and um, we'll go back to all of that. But yeah, that brings us to the big news this week that we found out late Friday afternoon. Stephen Moffat is retiring. His final person he's going to kill off on the show is himself. And so, but he's gonna really drag it out. We're gonna get a Christmas episode at the end of this year. There's not going to be any more Doctor Who in 2016. The BBC is saying because there's the Olympics, there's the Euro Cup, etc., and we don't want to compete with any of that. That I think that's hogwash. I mean, they've done Doctor Who during the Olympics before.
Yeah. As the English say, it's poppycock.
Poppycock, indeed. But it gives them an excuse to move the next season of Doctor Who, the 10th season of Doctor Who, to March of 2017. So that's when we're going to finally get season 10, and probably, I mean, unless Moffat introduces the next companion in the Christmas episode, which we could discuss whether we think that's likely or not. But we're not going to probably find that out until March of 2017. That's 14 months from now. That a-hole. But then it's going to be a full season, and then he's done. We're going to get 12 episodes, and then he's out, and replacing him will be Chris Chibnall, who has done, who previously wrote like a half dozen episodes of Doctor Who, and about a dozen episodes of Torchwood, and is best well known for doing Broadchurch. So let's just talk about all this, and then we'll go kind of more in depth on Chibnall and who he is and what we know about him. So I know both of you have pretty strong opinions. Who wants to go first?
I'll take it. And the reason I'm pretty pissed because I don't think he's retiring. I think he's being pushed out. I think the BBC is pushing him out. They've been butting heads for the past year, if all reports are to be believed, and they blame the tumbling ratings on Moffat, which is really stupid because last season we had one of the strongest Doctor Who seasons ever of any era. Last season was so good from start to end, and the ratings weren't as high as they were with the Matt Smith era or the David Tennant, and I think that's why they were pushing him out. And in an interview, if you read the interviews, there's this sort of, he doesn't straight out say that this is something that he wanted, because in one of the last interviews that I read, he said it's funny to be writing the episodes for the next season and then being told that I'm not going to be on it anymore. And I'm not sure if that was a slip, but when I read that, I was like, this is the BBC. And BBC always does stupid things like this. They're like the fox in our country, where they can't let a good thing just be itself. And I think I'm very unsure about Chris Chibnall. I really am very unsure. He's written some really good stuff, but he's written so much failure. His record is uneven at best. And we're going to get to what stuff he's written, both good and bad, but the bad is particularly bad. When we'll get to Broadchurch, because that's what he's most famously known for. The first season was absolutely fantastic. And if you're going to judge him taking over Doctor Who based solely on the first season, it's a good thing. But the second season, everything falls apart, and so much nonsense happens in the narrative that doesn't make sense. It's not needed. So many horrible decisions were made in the second season that it just worries me. Like, you're going to give them this franchise that's 50 years old, that had a resurgence. Like, what are you going to do with it? I'm not confident at all.
Yeah.
I think that's fair. Melissa, what do you think?
Well, first of all, I don't blame Moffat for the falling ratings either. And y'all know I have some things, I've said some things about him that were not flattering, but I do give him credit because I think he's an idea man. He's great with the ideas. He's got some really fantastical things in mind. I just don't think he always follows through very well with them, especially from an emotional aspect. But but I give him credit. I mean, his mind is magical in a lot of ways. His ideas. Um, and like Marco said, this season, I think that in New Who, the only season I enjoyed more was Donna's season. And this last season was a close second to that in my mind. Okay. Um, I believe, and this is just a theory, I have nothing to base it on, because we would have to see like a breakdown of the ratings by like gender and age and whatnot for me to even begin to try and prove this. My feeling is, Marco and I have talked about, well, I call them the teeny boppers, the girls who jumped on the Doctor Who bandwagon because, oh, number 10 is so dreamy, you know what I mean? Because they just love David Tennant, who's a handsome man. I mean, I don't blame them. But I never thought that those were actually Doctor Who fans, but rather Tennant fans. And I think that they're starting to tune out now. Because, Peter Capaldi is older, maybe not conventionally handsome, although I could argue that against that, but certainly not conventionally handsome probably to the teeny boppers. And so I feel like those people are probably tuning out because they were never there for the story. They were never there for plot or anything like that. Do you understand what I'm saying? I just think that's why. But also, last season was wildly uneven. It really was. And I didn't really enjoy last season very much. I think only Martha's season is the only one I enjoyed less than last season. So
The first season, you mean, of Capaldi? Not this past
yeah, the
last
first
season.
So-
season. I'm sorry, you're
So
right.
it's as if we're still in this.
You're
most
right. I'm
recent
still
season.
thinking like
Yeah.
we're still in this
Yep.
past season. No, but
Yep.
Capaldi's first season, I should say.
Yeah.
It was, and that had a lot to do with it. I mean, I
Totally.
think I even said on this podcast that if it weren't for this podcast, I might have, I don't know, I wouldn't quit watching Doctor Who, but I wouldn't have watched it live every week like I did. I might have like binged it maybe at some point, because the first season of Capaldi was rather disappointing to me. And so those are the two reasons in my mind for the falling ratings. I don't think it's necessarily Moffat's fault, although you could blame him, yes, for the bad storytelling in Capaldi's first season. But I think that damage was done well before that, because the ratings surged so much based on these girly fans who are now leaving. And they should have known that wasn't sustainable.
Right.
They should have known that. And so they should have expected, I guess it's like a little bit of a correction in a way in the ratings. But I don't think they're falling to the point that he deserves to get shown the door. I don't know if they just want fresh blood, or maybe, because if, like here, the older a show gets, the bigger the raises get and the more money they make. And, the BBC is notoriously cheap. So I think that has a lot to do with it too. You're right. Maybe he's being shown the door, but if he is, he's handling it quite graciously. So you gotta give it to him for that. But for whatever reason he's leaving, I'm worried about the new guy. I am. I'm not gonna lie. There's a couple of things that worry me. First of all, it's sad that we're gonna see Peter Capaldi go. Because they said there's going to be a new companion and a new doctor with the new showrunner, just like they did when Moffat came in. And it's funny because I was like, oh, it's too short of a tenure. But by the end of next season, it'll be 3 years. And so I started to wonder, well, why do I feel like this is such a short tenure? And it's because his first season was bad. And so it feels like we're just barely finally enjoying this doctor, and now there's a deadline now. You know what I mean? There's a there's a clock that's ticking now. Because I think honestly it's going to feel like we only had him for 2 seasons instead of 3, because the first one just felt like a misfire. So I'll be sad that he's going to go. And normally I'd be really interested in new blood, but based on Broadchurch and the mostly mediocrity of his Doctor Who episodes he's written, I'm a little worried. My greatest criticism of Moffat there's really two of them. One is that he never shows the emotional ramifications of what he does to his characters. I feel like that he just doesn't want to explore that at all. And the other one is that I don't think he writes women well. Whereas Chibnall, I think in terms of emotional ramifications, I mean, that's almost all Broadchurch was about, in a way, the fallout. So that won't be a problem. But in terms of the way he writes women, I see no difference. It's Moffat 2.0. And so if we're
He's
not,
a lot worse.
if we're gonna not improve upon that, then we should just stick with the devil we know. You know what I'm saying? I don't really, I don't know. If his Doctor Who episodes were better, maybe this wouldn't be so concerning. But and I'll admit, Moffat seems like he's trying. I even said this when we sort of did our roundup of last season, that it looks like maybe he's starting to get a clue about how to write women better, and he's being a little easier on them, because the women were always kind of the ones who suffered the most throughout his tenure. And so now, if that's true, if he's finally getting it, now he's leaving, it just, and you're going to replace him with someone who writes women like the women in Broadchurch. I just,
It's a problem.
it's just, I didn't like the women in Broadchurch at all.
They were extremely catty. But
Yeah.
we're gonna get to that. I want to expand on a couple of points you made. Well, one of the first things he says that you think he's taking it gracefully, even if he is being shown the door. And I think he doesn't really have much of a choice. It's like Joss Whedon recently announced that he and Marvel are kind of done, but he didn't say it with any animosity. Although there's probably a lot of animosity between Whedon and Marvel right now, especially since they pretty much screwed up his version of the second part of the Avengers.
Yeah.
So I think even if Moffat is taking this gracefully, I think there's probably issues there between him and the BBC. What a lot of people don't know is that when David Tennant announced that he was done with Doctor Who and he was going to move on, the BBC was going to end Doctor Who, end it completely. And Russell Davies said, "I'm done too." They didn't want to pass it on to Moffat. It was the insistence of Davies that they pass it on, that they gave him a shot. But something that you said, Mel, about the BBC being cheap, I think that's the main reason. Because Moffat has big visions, and he wants to bring the worlds of Doctor Who to the small screen, and he wants to make big storylines, which I really like and I really enjoy. And I think that is what's going to give the show longevity. But it costs money.
Yeah.
You're right. It costs money. And I think this is one of the things that they used to try to, not try, but I think they really did show him the door because of all that. Falling ratings, you're costing us too much, so I think you got to go. And that's a damn shame because we have an unknown commodity with Chibnall, and I'm really worried about it.
Well, one of the things that Moffat has always said is whenever people have asked, like, how do you juggle writing Sherlock and Doctor Who at the same time? Badly or poorly. I can't remember which one of them. And he admits it. So, I mean, if it is the case that the BBC is forcing him out, I would see it more likely that they would be like, look, we really want you to do more Sherlock. It's like our big prestige thing. Cumberbatch is huge. We need to do more of this, and it always does really well. Your Doctor Who, it's good, but people aren't really watching it. So why don't you focus on one or the other? And so we really want you to go do Sherlock.
Yeah, I thought of that, but I don't know if that's true. I don't think it's him that's badly managing it. I think it's the actors.
The actors,
I mean, you have like Martin Freeman going off for 2 years to make the Hobbit trilogy in Australia or New Zealand rather. I mean, he even if Moffat was free, his actors in Australia or New Zealand rather. Sorry, Kiwis. I know we have thousands of adorns in New Zealand, but it would be nice if this meant more Sherlock, but I don't think it will be. I mean, you've got Cumberbatch. He's now part of the Marvel, the cinematic universe, and that's going to take a lot of time. Those movies take a long time to make, and you know, Freeman's pretty popular too right now. He's pretty in demand. So I don't know. If this meant more Doctor Who, that might be, or more Sherlock rather, but I don't think it will necessarily. You know?
I guess that's true. So I don't know. I guess I'm trying to look on the bright side of this, and
I don't think there's much of a bright side.
okay. Well,
I just
I
don't.
now here's one thing that when I asked my wife, who has never really been interested in Doctor Who, and I said, if I told you that the guy who did Broadchurch was going to take over for Doctor Who, would that make you more likely or less likely to want to watch it? And she's immediately like, oh, way more likely. Yeah,
Really?
definitely.
Why?
And so I
No.
she loves murder drama stuff. I don't know. I don't know. I get it. Broadchurch was great, but I'm not like gaga over it. But what's really interesting to me is a lot of the non-Whovians who I talk to, when I'm like, oh yeah, it's going to be the Broadchurch guy, they're like, oh, that was amazing. Yes, let's do that.
Yeah, but once they find out this show's about a guy in a time machine that's a police box, solving mysteries and saving the world, they're going to be like, this is so not Broadchurch and not my cup of tea.
Yeah, I don't know.
Because
So
if the BBC's working that way, if they're basing it on the popularity of Broadchurch, those two genres are at opposite ends of the spectrum. So it doesn't make sense to justify this move based on that. Like, it makes me want to slap the BBC.
So let's talk a bit more about Chibnall's contributions to the Whoniverse. So the first episode he did is 42, which was spaceship hurtling towards the sun, takes place in real time. Meh. I have almost completely forgotten about that because I think, as I said when we first watched it, I'm like, yeah, I saw the Satan Pit, and I was kind of okay. I didn't need to go back and do this again. So, yeah, meh on 42. Then he did The Hungry Earth and Cold Blood, and introduced the Silurians, which I thought was great. And I thought those were two really good episodes. He killed off Rory, and then made Amy forget Rory. And so, of anything in this entire set of episodes, that's the thing that I go back to. I really like those episodes, and I think that they pair nicely with what they were trying to do this season with like Truth or Consequences, and talking about xenophobia and letting aliens like cohabitate with us, and having that kind of broader political undertone that was very, very strong in those episodes.
Right. I did like those two episodes quite a bit, so I got to give them credit there. Anything with the Silurians is always going to be kind of cool. And I did like that whole the focus on class warfare and all that stuff. And I really did like that somebody had the guts to kill an important character, even though he came back. But at least it was a good little shock. And then you had the added tension that Amy just forgets about Rory. So you're left wondering what's going to happen now. Those two episodes were very well written, and they're very, very. I really like them. How much influence did Moffat have? Because this was the first Matt Smith season. Was it the first?
It was towards the end of the.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how much influence did Moffat have over this? I mean, what I'm trying to ask is it more Moffat's direction, or is this clearly from him? Because 42 was him, and it was meh. And then you come back with these two, and they're pretty good.
Yeah. So that's a good question. Is like where does Moffat end and where does Chibnall end? So, Next, dinosaurs on a spaceship, aptly named and like delivers what it promised and not much more. It's like there's dinosaurs on a spaceship and other stuff
Yeah.
and robots, as I remember. Yeah,
Janitor Hogwarts.
yeah, yeah.
Pretty much.
And then the power of three, evil apps coming to take over, and Matt Smith hangs out with Rory and Amy in their house for 8, 9 months or whatever. Um, Man, that episode was just boring. Like it should have been so much more fun, and it just wasn't.
It was built. It was built up as something that was going to be a lot of fun. That there's going to be great consequence, and then when you're watching the episode, you're like, when are we getting to the real meat? And then by the time you know it, it's 5 minutes till the episode ends. Yeah, that was one of those episodes where I was like, you could have done so much more.
Yeah.
It didn't follow through on its promise, I felt, and I think that's what we
Right.
said when we reviewed it. It was
Mhm.
that this had so much potential, and then they just kind of like, it just kind of let the air out, and nothing really happened, and that was sad. There were moments that were fun, but it just overall, yeah, and that speaks to his follow through, I think, and so does Broadchurch season 2. It speaks to a lack of follow through, which is troubling if this guy is going to run a franchise like this, Yeah, I don't know. I don't want to like pick apart things in such a micro way, but it's hard not to,
Well, I mean, this is all we know about him, and all we can do is like, well, this is what he's done in the past, so what is he likely to do in the future? And this is all we have. It's not. I mean, when Moffat took over, uh, we had Blink, we had Silence in the Library, and what else? There were a couple of others in there.
Well, let's talk about that. When Moffat wrote during the Davies tenure, you knew it was Moffat.
Mm-hmm.
He had his flavor. His episodes were darker. You knew it was him. Chibnall, what we've seen from him under Moffat, is very much Moffat. Compare 42 done under Davies, right? It was basically a repeat of the Devil's Sparrow, Satan's Pit, right?
Yeah.
There are so many similarities. So does this guy? Is the only thing that he's bringing to the table is that he mimics well? Is that what we're talking about? Because aside from the episodes we've spoken about, he also wrote The Magician's Apprentice, which was this past season. That's what we opened up with.
Mm-hmm.
But the flavor is so Moffat. That's the one episode he wrote for this past season. And it has the texture, the feel, the sound of all the rest of the season, many of which what Moffat wrote himself. So how are you supposed to judge Chibnall here if he doesn't have his own stamp? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think
at least other writers who've written, they have their own stamp. Like you have farting aliens, you have somebody falling in love with a slate tile. There's however good or bad they might be, they have their own flavor. Chibnall, all he's done is mimic. So once again, like I'm not trying to say that the world's gonna end and the sky is falling, but what does he really bring to the table?
Yeah. Well, okay, so let's talk about some of the stuff he did in Torchwood that he did some of my more favorite Torchwood episodes. And but thinking about these, a lot of these were kind of Broadchurchy in that they were kind of they seemed somewhat more like a police procedural. Like Torchwood kind of got that way every once in a while.
Right.
So he did Day One, which was the second half of the pilot. He did Cyberwoman, which I thought that was a pretty. It was interesting. It wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing, but I thought did some character development on Yanto, and we had that kind of ethical question about what to do with a cyber girlfriend. So that was. Then he did Countryside, which I kind of really liked that one, as disturbing as it was, and non-Torchwoody as it was. It's just, oh, we're a village and we eat people.
It's very Broadchurchy. This one is
It is
countryside.
very Broadchurchy, right? Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, then End of Days, with the giant monster, and the ending that like totally seemed like Ghostbusters to me.
Yeah.
So where Jack tells him to, take all of his life energy or whatever. Um, that was supposed to be like big and consequential, and it was like, well, that was good, but it was kind of meh. It was the meh side of good.
You're like, so that happened.
Yeah, it's like, okay, well, I guess that was cool, but it wasn't bad, but it wasn't like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. Um, then he did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, um, which I really like that episode, but I think I like that more, just because James Marsters is great, and the fact that they were able to play with John Hart more,
Right.
and do that. So that was much more my speed. What do you guys think about that one?
I like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang because Hart was always ahead of the team, and it was the one villain that was getting the best of them all the
Mhm.
time, and you don't know if he's evil or if what he's doing has a purpose or what's the story with him and Jack because they know each other, and there's the time agency. There was a lot of stuff thrown in there that was really good that moved the story of Torchwood and especially Jack. It moved it forward so well and it added plenty of mystery that was missing. This episode was very, very good.
Mhm. Then we had Adrift, which was very Broadchurchy, with all the missing people, and they're out on the island in the facility.
Right.
So I mean, that was like the first half, especially, was like basically straight up a police procedural. Um, I I don't know. Is there much more to say about that, or?
This is one of the best episodes because it showed Gwen's humanity and how she just wants to help people and she wants to use Torchwood to help, and Jack's trying to show her that we don't work that we don't operate that way for a reason. And that one of the last scenes of that episode was when that guy starts screaming.
Hmm.
Remember
Yep.
that? It's really heartbreaking. It's horribly heartbreaking because Gwen brings the mother, and I mean, there's no comfort for the mother in seeing that. It's really heartbreaking. And this was very, very well written. I think it's one of the best episodes in Torchwood prior to Children of Earth.
And then well, these are three episodes in a row. You had Adrift, then you have a kind of a two-parter, Fragments and Exit Wounds. Again, bringing back John Hart, and you have in Fragments the split-up storyline where everybody's got like their own thing, and then and then they're it ends with them blowing up the building, right? Is
Right.
that? Yeah.
That's when we lose. What's his name? Why am I? Owen. This is when
Owen.
they lose Owen, right?
Is it when they lose Owen? I don't know.
Exit.
You love to hate Owen, Melissa. Is this when he dies? Is
Yes,
this when they
yes,
kill him off?
I do believe it is. Yes, he was already like zombified or whatever, and
Right.
yeah, this
Yeah.
is his final end, the real
Yeah.
death. Um, yeah, I do believe that's the. I'm bad with names. I have to hear the plot a little bit before I did. I don't always remember the names of the episodes unless they're like really good or really bad.
Yeah.
Uh, but it's funny though when you guys were mentioning, especially about Heart and everything, it had me thinking because like during this was Davies's baby, right? Torchwood,
Hmm.
and the way writers' rooms work, it's like a lot of times what happens is the writers all gather and they come to get to a consensus about who should do what or what the where they're going with things, and they break the stories together. and they decide on like characters together, and then somebody's assigned to write it. So the person who writes the episode didn't necessarily invent those characters or those storylines. Maybe they did, but maybe it was a group thing too. You just don't, or maybe Davies handed him this outline and says write it. It's not always, I mean, you can tell, like with Moffat, like what you said, something like Blink in a otherwise really kind of terrible season, clearly somebody else was doing all the thinking and creating and writing on this, and that was Moffat. But he didn't necessarily have everything to do with all of these, so we don't really know what he's capable of, I think, other than Broadchurch. Like to take something like Doctor Who, where he just kind of was plugged in here and there for an episode or two, and even with Torchwood, I feel like whatever we glean, we just don't know, because we don't know how much he had to do with the actual plot or with the actual storylines of those episodes. You know what I'm saying?
Totally.
So it's so hard. I mean, thinking about like Hart, which was a great character invention in my mind, is a lot of fun to watch. Part of that was the actor, of course, but some of it was just that they really just made a good character, a solid, really fun to watch character. But how much of that was Chibnall? It's impossible to say.
Yeah.
Maybe that was completely his invention. Maybe he pitched that character and they were like, hey, that's good, let's run with that. But maybe somebody else pitched it and he was just in charge of writing out the script. You know what I'm saying? So
I don't think he had anything to do with creating the character, because the storyline was already made by Davies. Because remember, this has to do with Jack's brother.
Yeah.
So I
maybe
think that
he
was...
didn't invent it, but he might have fleshed him out. Who knows?
Okay,
But
yeah,
I think that was probably more the actor in this case, though.
Right.
But if he did invent someone like that, if that was his idea, then that bodes well, for us as Who fans, because that shows that he can create something or somebody with the kind of fantastical storyline, and that, you know what I'm saying, like that would fit in to something like the Whoverse. But I just feel like the way most writers' rooms works, most likely he was just scripting it. And not to say that that's not hard work, it is, and it takes a lot of imagination still, but he might not have had anything to do with any of these. So like for me, something like Broadchurch is more what we have to go on, but it's so different from Doctor Who that it's just, I feel like we're kind of chasing our tails in a way, trying to figure him out from these episodes. You know
Well,
what
let's talk about shows that he was in charge of running. Prior to Broadchurch, there was Camelot, which was a hot mess.
I don't believe I saw that.
It was on Showtime or Stars, one of those two.
Oh, is that
Stars.
the JFK one? Are you talking
No,
about?
No.
Camelot, and it had Ava Green. And how can you go wrong with having her in your show? And she's the only good thing about that show, because everything else was a mess. It was just a mess.
Well, was she Guinevere or something? Camelot, you mean?
No, she was Morgan Le Fay.
Okay.
Okay, Andy, did you ever see Camelot?
I did not, and I always got it and Merlin mixed up, like which one was which. So, because I've never seen either one, but I know that they're out there.
Yeah, well, the casting's bad except for Green, and the storylines just got weird and stupid. And at least Merlin was fun, as anachronistic as it would be at times, and that would annoy me. At least it was fun. Camelot was just a big mess. It was just a gigantic mess. So based on that, since he ran that show, like, he didn't handle the characters all that well. And then we have Broadchurch. We have Broadchurch now, and I've already said the first season, brilliant, absolutely brilliant. There is tension from minute to minute, episode to episode, until the very end of the first episode, of the last episode, and then you get to season 2, And this is where it all unravels because Chibnall brings in some other characters that are not fleshed out at first. Then he tries to flesh them out, and he doesn't do it well at all. Their motivations are hinky. Everybody's like, everything falls apart in the second season. And I don't even know what we're going to do with the third season. You've seen it, right, Mel?
What? Broadchurch?
Yeah, for the first and second season?
I've seen them both. Yes.
Okay, because like I have no idea what a third season's going to be dealing with.
Yeah, I feel the exact same way. We are in total agreement on this one thing. Yeah, like it felt like the story was closed, and really it felt like they didn't need a second season, to be honest. It would have been so much better if they just stopped in season one. And I love Eve Miles, obviously, a Torchwood alum. But her character was ugh.
She was everywhere.
God.
She was everywhere.
Ugh.
Everywhere. And
Awful.
Lee Ashton was like, there was so much pointlessness happening in season 2 that I don't understand it.
Which is worrisome because it speaks to his inability to follow through. It speaks to his inability to have like a long form story, and I've criticized Moffat for sometimes his long form stories not ending well, like maybe a little disappointing, like like we talked about, there for a season and a half nearly we didn't know why Capaldi had that face, which was obviously, from a previous episode. And then the explanation was like, well, you know what I mean? So he does, but at least up until the very end, it kept you wondering. You know what I'm saying? I didn't wonder very much. It just, he didn't, it's, occasionally Moffat doesn't completely stick the landing. But I feel like in this case, Chibnall just landed on his head. You know what I mean? It's
yeah. Well,
this was, for me, it's even worse because you guys seem to have liked season 1 a lot. I thought it was okay. I had huge problems with the women in this story. I know I sound like a broken record because I say that a lot on this podcast, but these women, I mean, oh my God. It's like that old adage about women are made to suffer. That's all they do in that first season is suffer.
It's worse the second season, though.
Yeah.
It's like he created characters that are so freaking pathetic that have side stories that have nothing to do with the current narrative, and they have no implications as to the end result of the narrative. And there's no reason for any of that. And this is the thing that worries me the most about Chibnall, is that Moffat could handle 2 storylines happening at once. Chibnall started to juggle, and everything just fell off of his hands in the second season. He couldn't handle the previous murder investigation that the detective had, that David Tennant's character had, and the trial at the same time. He couldn't handle it. Because the storylines didn't merge well, and they had him at a court, then running around countryside the next second, and there was so much that didn't make sense, and it shows that Chibnall can't really handle 2 storylines happening at once, where Moffat did. So what does this mean for Doctor Who? Are we going to have straightforward stories that have no long arcs? Because that's what made Doctor Who great in the end, with the new Who anyway. The long storylines that kept you going, that went somewhere. I don't want to go back to a Monster of the Week type of thing. That's what I'm afraid of.
Broadchurch to me says, here's a guy who had one really good idea and executed it pretty well. And when he got done with it, didn't know where else to go from there. Mm-hmm. And I haven't seen that kind of imagination apparent anywhere else, or that kind of passion apparent anywhere else. Everywhere else, it seems very workmanlike. Like there's nothing really wrong with it, but it's not like, oh my gosh, this is the most amazing thing ever. So I'm trying to be optimistic and not be like, oh hey, the sky is falling. Because again, I did really like that first season of Broadchurch.
I did too.
But if we're going to get half a good season of Doctor Who, and then the second half is going to be the second season of Broadchurch, then
Well, but if they cast someone really great as the Doctor, like when you look at Capaldi's first season, which wasn't very good, the only really shiny star was Capaldi himself. He still, I mean, he really elevated what was otherwise mediocre or occasionally just bad material. So there is a chance that, it might not be so bad, but they have to get the casting right, and I honestly have no clue what they're going to do with it at this point.
Well,
I mean, I've always wanted them to have Haley Atwell as the Doctor.
Oh, that would be awesome.
I'm almost worried though, because here's what I don't want to have happen. I don't want to have an awesome female Doctor with a great actress playing her, and then have her poorly written, and then everyone turns around and says, "Oh, see, you can't have a female Doctor, you can't have a female lead on a science fiction show. That's why we don't do that, and this has got to be a man from now on." Burp. Like that, I fear for that. So I'd I don't know who I would actually want to like try and do
Yeah,
that.
honestly, I think it'll be a man because there's so much pressure that's going to be on Chibnall, and people are going to be watching it like a hawk and dissecting it, kind of like we're doing now. And
Yep.
they're not going to put that pressure on him, I don't think, to have the first female Doctor. So maybe later in his tenure, if he lasts, then maybe. But I don't see them going that grand when they're trying to ease him in.
And
I would. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. I was gonna say I think Moffat was ready to make that move.
Yeah, it seemed like that's where he was going, but he's leaving. So yeah.
Well, and we had far more female writers who were writing episodes and
true.
female directors. And I think having that perspective behind the camera and in the scripting process was incredibly important in being able to flesh out a character like a Shielder and bringing that and making that more real. So, you know, I guess maybe if Chibnall is just kind of workmanlike and allows other really, really smart people to move forward with it, then it could be really good. I personally would have rather seen them be like, we're going to hire like Jane Espenson. And yeah, it's going to be a female Doctor. And yes, we're being very specific and very explicitly like, this is the direction that we're going with this. But we got what we got, so there we go.
Jesus, I'm really worried. The whole casting issue is pretty big too. I mean, if you look, Chibnall was also responsible for Grace Point, the U.S. version of Broadchurch,
Oh,
which was horrible. He wrote every episode, right? He wrote every episode. He ruined Broadchurch for the U.S. version of Broadchurch anyway. And you know what I like about Broadchurch is that the detective who is working with David Tennant, she's this strong female. She's cool. She's awesome. And she acts like a detective. But here's the thing: when you work that job, you don't look like a runway model, right? Grace Point had Walter White's wife as the counterpoint to David Tennant, and she's looking all pretty in the beach and whatnot. And I guess that's an American thing, but he was responsible for casting, if I understand it correctly. So if he doesn't understand how to cast, we're not going to have those moments like a Shielder or a Peter Capaldi type of actor as the Doctor.
well, but he also cast Arthur Darvill in Broadchurch and made other smart choices like that. So I actually think like that casting choice for the American version was more about like they probably was it NBC who did that?
Like Fox.
Yeah, or was it Fox?
It's Fox.
I don't remember.
I thought it was NBC.
No, I'm pretty sure it's Fox.
Whoever did Grace Point, they're like, no, we know what our female lead needs to look like.
Yeah, Fox has a history
I
of
was Fox. You're
being
right.
very, very of interfering a lot with the showrunners, and doing things kind of their way and hoisting things upon the showrunners that like crossovers or whatever that they didn't really want to do. And like airing episodes out of order. They did that with Dollhouse. They did that with Firefly. Um, so they have a history of interfering. But I'm not sure what your point was, Marco. With it was Anna Gunn, right, from Breaking Bad, right?
Uh-huh.
What was your point that they shouldn't have cast her?
Well, the thing is, with UK shows, if you see UK shows, the female actors that they use, they look part because when you're a cop, like, and it's a bit of a generalization, but you don't have this runway model look to you. Like,
You thought
and
Anna Gunn looked like a runway model in Grace Point?
you want to, well, if you compare her to the Broadchurch counterpart, there's
Oh, okay, she was a little matronly. Okay, I'll give you that. In
there's a
Grace
marked
Point.
difference because
Well,
they have
she matched her character, who was pathetic. I don't think Anna Gunn's character was pathetic. But I don't know. I guess I kind of disagree. She just looked like someone who was put together, which her character is kind of put together. You know what I mean? She wasn't pathetic like her UK counterpoint. I just feel like that was okay. But I wouldn't be surprised if Fox had a little something to do with that, because remember they were just coming off the end of Breaking Bad. It was a huge thing. She was an in-demand actress. I wouldn't be surprised if Fox maybe hoisted her upon them. That's not necessarily on Chibnall, because Fox has a history of kind of interfering, like I said. So I'm not sure. I guess I disagree that a female cop can't look like that. I think that's a terrible precedent to set, that they can't be put together.
no. I mean, in terms of looks, I think it's highly unrealistic.
So
Like,
pretty girls can't be cops?
I don't know.
Oh, we lost you again.
No, I got him.
Oh, you do? I
Yeah.
can't hear him.
Uh-oh.
I can't hear Mark. You can hear Mark, but I
I
can't?
hear him. You don't hear him at all?
No, I don't hear him at all.
Marco, talk to me. Yeah, I can hear you. I don't know why I think this is an Andy thing.
Uh-oh. This
Because I
might be an Andy
do.
thing.
Although your voice does get lower, it goes it weirdly so, almost like you stepped away from the mic, and then yeah, it might be that thing. It goes up and down a little, but I can hear you still.
Because I heard like a thing like something got unplugged. Like a mic
Oh,
got unplugged and then it
can you hear him now?
nope.
I can hear you.
I'm trying to
Yep, I can hear you.
okay, I'm gonna mute you and then unmute you.
I just want to say I'm the only one who can hear everyone, and I do not have earphones on. Just saying.
Ha!
Just
Good point.
saying.
Good point. Okay, hang on. Let's
Yeah, I
see.
can hear you, but it sounds clacking. What is clack? What are you clacking? Oh, okay. It sounded like one of those things you wave, with the little hands and they clap each other. Those noisemakers. I don't remember what those are called, but that's what it sounded like. Yep, still hear you. I don't hear Andy, but I think that's because he's not doing anything. Yep. Now it's my turn to break something. I better hurry because I don't think we got much longer.
No, I think we need to wrap up pretty much
Yeah,
anyway. So, okay, well, I'm just gonna
I can hear
cut the
you.
yeah, I'm just gonna cut this off and like I think that what we've got with Chibnall is a really mixed bag. And I mean, time will tell. Unfortunately, we're not going to know until 2018. So
True.
we have 2 years to speculate just how badly he's going to be. And who knows, maybe he'll write some episodes in season 10 that are going to blow us away, and we're going to feel in very good hands. So I don't know. But until then, we're gonna keep on going. I wanted to get to talking about Legends of Tomorrow and Agent Carter and all the other cool stuff that's going on right now. But obviously, we didn't have time for that. Let's come back next week and we'll
Okay.
continue our conversation, and we'll come back to that and all of our other news. And I'm also going to get started on Sylvester McCoy and Davison and go from there. So, but thanks everyone for listening. Thanks Mark and Melissa for being here. Sorry, Mark, that your mic kept going out and we couldn't hear you all the time. But we love you, and you're great. Um, and thanks to all of you who are listening, and thanks for everyone at Big Shiny Robot for hosting our podcast. So until then, we will see you all next time.
Bye.
And that's over.